I guess I didn't really find, leaning back to identity, I did a lot of discovery afterwards, and a lot of that came from trauma.
Yeah.
So music is a very big part of who I am. I had the joy to experience some psychological abuse in high school that led to depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress. So I lost a big part of my identity, which is, not something you want to lose, especially at that age. So I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, who I was, and then I no longer had music, which was always like my safety net to support me.
Yeah.
So that led to alcoholism, a lot of drinking, a lot of bad choices, and a trip to my university sent me to the psych ward. My first try at university, and I worked full time. But yeah, so I was always like that sort of person, and I've always just seen myself as that. As a kid, I played like this primary school. I used to hang out with the guys more than the girls because I thought the girls were really annoying. They always wanted to play baby dolls and things like that, and I didn't get that. What was it, year 2, kindergarten? They wanted to play horsies. I hated playing horsies.
No Saddle Club? Hello world.
I hated Saddle Club. I got Star Wars instead.
Star Wars?
Yeah, I had Star Wars and Harry Potter. And then looking back at it, I go, oh no, I was the weird kid. It's not that they were weird. I was weird. When you spend your lunchtime reading Harry Potter in the library with another girl, you're like, oh, weird. Yeah. And then you start questioning. Then we had lockdown. Lockdown is a big period for a lot of people. We were all stuck inside with our own thoughts and our families.
Preach.
That leaves a lot of time to self-reflect, doesn't it? Thinking back to, I watch a lot of TV. John T can also attest to this. Lot of TV and movies.
Books.
And books. I ran out of things to watch on Netflix. It was that bad. But then thinking back to my childhood favorite movies is when I when you get the first inklings. This is a similar thing for a lot of queer people that I've discussed with. You look back on the characters you really liked in the movies that you really liked and went, that was a sign that I probably should have realized. So John T, you've told me before, what was your favorite the first time?
Oh, yeah. We were talking about this before. I remember it was a 5th birthday party. We went to the movies to watch Percy Jackson.
Great movie.
The Lightning Thief. And me and about 2 or 3 other guys, we were about 10 or 11 at that point, just suddenly were absolutely smitten with Alexandra Daddario, who's an actress who, I can still remember because it was that first thing as a young boy growing up where you suddenly realize that you were attracted to another person. And we had this conversation. I was like, dude, she's so hot. And that whole guy thing that we went through at that time in my life. And in retrospect, that was, I can identify that as an early signifier of my sexuality and my sexual preference as I was starting to go through puberty, becoming a parent. And I didn't recognize that at the time, but lo and behold, I'm still into chicks. That's just always been my thing. And so
for me, it was looking back at the characters that I really liked. I was obsessed with the Bring It On movies. For those who don't know, it's about cheerleaders, and it's the exact same plot line remade 4 or 5 different times, but it's the first one that I was really in love with, and there was a character called Missy. She was a gymnast who rocks up. She had dyed hair, and she had more of an edgy vibe. And it's one of those things where it's do I want to be that person or do I want to kiss that person?
Oh, wow.
And that's what it was. And it's a bit of both. Bit of both it is.
Oh, wow. See, I was into Barbara Eden, I Dream of Jeannie.
Which was, I also loved.
I wanted that
too much.
blonde ponytail.
It's great.
And I loved her. I think I wanted to be her.
That's about to say,
but I didn't want to kiss her.
The questioning comes in with as a woman or
I wanted that outfit.
AFAB.
Yeah.
AFAB is assigned female at birth. Ooh. So that's for a term that's often used, especially in different gender bending spaces, yeah. So I'm AFAB and stuff like that. It's a lot of looking back on those characters and it's like, oh, did I really want to be that person? Or maybe it was I'm attracted to that person.
But there's a
Interesting.
distinction there because I think about like that Percy Jackson example versus we've talked about The Last of Us on this podcast before. The game that's based on, I think Ellie, who in that first game is in the game, I think she's like 15. I want to be like Ellie, and that's not a romantic attraction thing. That's I identify parts of her character that I attach to and admire and want to be more like. And so, who was the character you were talking about?
Oh,
I Dream of Jeannie.
I Dream of Jeannie, but and Endora from Bewitched, the bitchy mother, I loved her too.
And so I'm assuming that's probably not an attractive thing. That's more of a
it was
aspirational
character.
thing.
Character.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So you wanted to be a strong female.
Female, yeah.
Another irony if
With
you want
magic
to go
powers.
Who doesn't want magic powers? I believe that fantasy is personally my favorite genre because if I wanted to be sad and miserable and watch something about the real world, I'd go into the real world. It's sad enough. Irony being a lot of people who are part of the queer community relate to the villains.
Interesting.
The outcasts or the overlooked or things like that because that's who, you know, they're less likely to relate to the, what's it called? The heroes who are the perfect and stuff. They're like the flawed character because that's who you see.
Always love the flawed
so
character.
interesting.
They're so vulnerable.
Exactly.
The flawed character.
They
Yeah.
often are more complex as well.
Always. Yeah.
I love, this is no shock to anyone that listens to this show, I love horror and science fiction
Really?
and fantasy.
Really?
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
weird.
shocking.
Guillermo del Toro, do you know who Guillermo del Toro is? Do you know who?
No.
Guillermo del Toro is a director. He won Best Picture a number of years back for The Shape of Water. He has made a whole bunch of really, really fantastic movies that are in the kind of horror, fantasy, science fiction.
He wasn't.
Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh,
yeah,
he was.
Pan's Labyrinth. And so he talks about, from a very young age, identifying with monsters. And he loves fantasy and horror and science fiction because of
Wow.
monsters.
Wow.
And he remembers very vividly watching Creature from the Black Lagoon as a kid. And there's a moment in that movie where it's from the 50s. It's one of those, it's one of the very last Universal monster movies that came out in that long line of movies, where the creature, there's that image of the creature carrying the woman, the blonde bombshell, and it's presented as this horrible, scary thing. And he always identified with the monster because all the monster wants to do is connect with someone. And he's being portrayed as the monster. And so he views monsters and creatures and horror as inherently about the other and identifying with the other. So when you watch his movies like The Shape of Water is essentially
A
Creature
love
from the
story.
Black Lagoon, but the creature gets the girl.
Oh, see, I want to watch that now.
Oh, it's a fantastic film. You probably
Is
love
as
it.
long as there's no axe through anyone's head with blood.
There's some good creature stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking back to that movie.
Yeah, it's great. But that's exactly,
Does
I
fuck
think,
a
I
fish.
don't know if you, she does fuck a fish. The what you're talking about identifying with villains, I think that is a really powerful thing. And I think I'm a straight white guy, but I identify with that as well in the sense that I love the idea of portraying villains or monsters or anyone that is an other as someone just as deserving of love and affection and connection and community and all of those.
I find a lot of people find like their identity or just questions or things like that from media, which is why it's good to have good media out there.
And representation.
And things like that, and which is why I loved the recent thing of creating stories of the backstories behind villains, giving the villains more depth than just bad character, I'm evil, therefore that's why I do this, which you don't get a lot of these days. A lot of the more like obscure and, relatable, which is hilarious as well because everyone's just like, this is the main character. I think a really good representation of that is Encanto. Encanto is one of my favorite
I love Encanto. Yeah.
Disney movies that's come out. I think it's right up there with Mulan, which I'll get into later for a different reason.
Let's get down to business.
We'll get into that one. But Encanto, first of all, is about family trauma and generational trauma, which is things. But Disney created a lot of dolls for this one character, the oldest sister, who is the pretty one with the flower powers and stuff like that. They're like, she's really pretty. She's going to be the best selling one. Lo and behold, the movie comes out and the favorite character is actually Louisa, who is the sister who carries all the burdens and is like the strong one, who's not conventionally attractive, but like has the most relatable character. And they're like, what do? We've made all this merch for this other character, not expecting.
And the kids love
this
the
one.
little one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
so interesting.
So like the characters that they didn't realize. And that's like this character who they related to. And we're all adults now. We have adult money to spend it on whatever we like.
But also like the character of Bruno.
Exactly. That's the other favorite character.
That's otherness encapsulated in a character. Like getting like a character being outcast because they are an other. And then the whole movie is about empathizing with and understanding the other. Like I just think it's
a great
it's wonderful.
movie.
Yeah.